Hi, can we start? Cool. So, hi, I'm Tamas Kokeny. I'm from a small country from Europe, from Hungary. I work in Lab.coop. I'm a lead developer and also an instructor. I teach programming in JavaScript for programmers and also for non-programmers. Here are my slides if you want to follow. So it's 1RU, small s, small r, ZO. Yeah, so this is the last presentation today. And the last presentation should be happy, shouldn't be about code and stuff. That's not the case. I will show a lot of code examples and also tests. So it's going to be a long, boring, and hard presentation. Sorry about that. Yeah, who do testing, actually? All right. OK, so let's say we have to do a job. We have to create a component. I show you a really easy component that consists of a video. And if you hover on the video, it starts to play. And if you leave it, then it stops. And it does the thing. And actually, when it ends, it will log the ID of the video. The ID is passed on the attribute on the video object or element. And it will count how many times you hover this video. So it's a really simple component. Let's implement it in JavaScript. The usual way is, all right, so we have to do something like a component, then OK, choose an MVC framework. So we can choose from, I don't know, Angular or Backbone or React and stuff. So we would choose a framework, for example, in this case, Angular. Maybe it's not the best choice, but that's what we get. Maybe the client needed it. So that's how it usually looks like in the directory structure, that, OK, we have controllers and services, views and directives, everything related with Angular. And what you don't know where to put, you will create a lib directory and put everything there. I don't know what to do with these files. And you would write a controller. Mostly that's the first part. So every MVC framework have a controller. Like, for example, here, this is the linking function for the directive. So it's fairly easy. It's not really long. You can easily understand. There are the bindings for mouse enter, for leave, and if the video is ended. And how would you test this code? You would have to use the library or API for that. So for example, for this, you would have to use the Angular testing mechanism. And I think it's pretty hard to use. I think it's one of the worst parts of Angular to create these objects and especially test the directive. So let's get back to this code. What are the responsibilities in this code? I can see three different things. One is the business logic. So the yellow one is, OK, we have a variable that counts the hovers, and we increment it on every mouse enter. We have some Angular binding, so it's fairly easy. We can read it from the document, OK, that the element on notation would do the bindings. And we also have kind of like an entity or something like that, well, not only one. So for example, one is the video DOM element itself that would be, that we can get the ended property, and also we can play it and pause it. And also, yeah, sorry, I forgot. So we didn't play the video again. We do not play the video again if it's ended. And also, we have this logger entity, which will log on the end that, OK, this many times you hovered it, and this is the video ID. OK, but so I think it would be way cooler if we can separate this. It would lead to good things. It's not a new thing. In other languages, especially with object-oriented world, we know how to work with clean architecture. We separate the delivery mechanism and the use case. So we would do every delivery-related thing in the delivery part of the software, and every use case related, so the business logic, it should go to the interactor and to the entities. So when somebody does something on the UI, the delivery mechanism should create a simple data structure, a request object, that would describe what happened on the UI. And the interactor should figure out, based on these simple data structures, what to do with it. And ask the entities what to do and stuff. By figuring out the response that would describe how to update the UI. So again, it's a really simple data structure that would describe, okay, the UI should do this. And we will pass it to the Angular part, and it would create all the necessary changes. So here is an example where I remove the business logic to a factory, and I injected all the needed entities for it. So, for example, I injected the DOM element itself, and also the video ID and the logger entity. But right now, this code only has the connection between Angular and the business logic. It doesn't contain any business logic, only Angular-related code. So the second half of the function is just the binding between the user action and the business behavior. Yeah, so how does it look like to implement this factory? It's fairly easy. Every use case is a function, so the play use case would use these entities. It queries the DOM element. If it's ended or not, it will call the play if it's needed. It increments the play count, and so on and so forth. And also, on the log end, we will call this logger entity. Okay, what happened? What are the pros here? Actually, right now, it's really easy to change the framework. I just use React. It was really easy to change it. I didn't, because I already separated the business logic from the delivery mechanism, so right now it does work with React. Actually, the example I showed, it's in React. And I think it's a better choice, but it's a different question. And also, it's a bit easier to test. So you don't have to use all the Angular-related testing mechanism. You can use just easy spies and create some fake elements, and you can test that. So here, I just created a fake element with the spy on the play function. And I create this hover player entity, or not entity, sorry, interactor. I call play on it, and I can check if the fake element play was called or not. Okay, but what are the cons? I think it's still pretty hard to test. So playing with spies and stuff, it's not the easiest way. And also, there are other problems. And not that easy to inject these dependencies, for example. So most of the cases, you would create these entities once, and you would update those. So actually, in these two test cases, I used the same fake element, and I mutated this fake element on the beginning of the functions, and I tested these use cases differently. But it can be tricky, because if you forget to change the state on the beginning of the function, you will end up in a really bad position. You can use the college dormitory rule. So you always have to wash the dishes before you are eating, because it's already full with dishes. So you always do the thing on the beginning of the function, but it's easy to forget, and it can cause bugs. So I think it's way better to handle these fakes as immutables. So always create the new word, always create the new immutable fakes. So create a function that will create all the interactors, all the entities for the tests. And as you can see, the test is way shorter. As you can see, it just only contains the needed information for the test. So the first line, you can see, okay, is ended true. The second line, you just do the action, and the third line, you just assert it. It's way more clean, way more easy to read, and you cannot really interact with other tests because you're already creating different objects for different tests. But I still really don't like these spies because you have to inject these fake things, you have to care about, you have to actually add a new library for spies and stuff. So there is a solution. Instead of calling the end dependencies, so calling the functions of these entities, just pass an object. So as you can see, right now I didn't injected any dependency. I just added the ID. And on the end, I just return with an object. It's really easy. And okay, but if I return with these objects, I have to answer to these objects or get the data from these. So for example, on the logger entity, it was a function like info, and it needed 2 arguments. So it's really easy to create a function that will take an entity and return a function that will take these command objects. So in this case, if the logger is wrapped, it's just a function that takes an action, for example, info, so call that method of the logger with these arguments. So how does our controller look like in this case? In this case, you do not inject your entities. You just create all the related things here. So for example, the hover interactor and also the video element and the logger. And you just call these in a row. So for example, hover play is called. It will pass an object to the next function, to the video element. You don't have to use promises here, but I think it's way more readable in a line. Okay, first something happened, then something happened, and so on. And right now, it's way, way, way easier to test this. Actually, in this code, it doesn't have any library in it instead of the testing library. So we're just using simple objects here. So actually, I'm just adding, okay, this is ended, and on the end, I just expect, okay, this output should have this action that play. And it's way easier to test. You don't have to set up mocks. You don't have to set up any callbacks or something like. You just pass simple data structures and receive simple data structures. And in this way, it's way, way, way easier to test your code. So what are the good things in this example? You usually have to test your code. I think most of the clients would require that, okay, you need to test your code. It's a bit harder to write your code this separately, but I think it saves you a lot of time on testing. So I think testing is really hard, and if you can write your code in a different way, that would help to test it. That would, on the end, you will gain a lot of time. And actually, you can change your directory structure this way, that you just create some directories for each use case. So for example, I have a directory for the hover player, and I will create another directory called plugins, where I can put all the libraries and all the bindings with these libraries. So for example, one project I've worked with, it was an Angular and Koa project. And we had a plugins directory with a Koa and Angular directory in it. And in these directories, we only had the bindings of these libraries. And it's really easy to change this way the libraries. You just delete this directory, you add, I don't know, a React directory, and do these bindings again. But all the use cases are remaining. Yeah, so that was my talk in a so I guess I tell a lot of things in a really short of period of time. So yeah, hit me with questions. Yes? I don't know. I just found it on the net. All right. I guess it was too much.